talking about the digestive system, I thought we would start our lesson today, just like we have started many lessons where we start a new system, and that is a little trivia, little facts, some numbers, some things that are kind of outrageous to us sometimes. So get ready to type in your answers and we'll see how many that you get right. So here's a question for you. Let's see, how long does it take, do you think, for food to travel from your mouth to your stomach? What do you think? Put an answer there and see if we can get anybody close. Oh, I see some good answers. I think I saw the right answer as I was scrolling up. It takes about 7 seconds for food to travel from your mouth to your stomach, going down the esophagus. So that's a great question. We'll talk more about that later. Let's see. How many liters of food and liquid do you think your stomach can hold? So what number? Liters. So think about that Pepsi bottle. Think about that 2 liter and then kind of go from there. Is it less? Is it more? Oh, I did see some right answers. So on this one, you guessed well. So your stomach can hold about 1.5 liters of food and liquid at a time. Let's see. What material that we eat is actually, we cannot digest it. It is considered indigestible and we just pass it. But we do eat it. We do take it in and it's with all the other nutrients and then it's removed from the food. Anybody know? Oh, I do see some right answers. Some of you have been studying nutrition. Fiber is the right answer on that one. So great question. Let's see. I think I've got one more. How long do you think your entire digestive tract is, roughly in feet? How long? Oh, you guys are wild guessers. Those are some good big numbers. All right, so the answer is the entire digestive tract is less than 30 feet long. Now that does vary, of course, by lots of different things, but on average, that's about what we're looking at. So let's start talking about the digestive system now that we have some answers and some things, some trivia. So let's talk about the function. Go ahead and fill in those blanks in your notes. And let's talk about what is the function of the digestive system. So we know, I think when we think about the digestive system, a couple words that come to mind would be nutrients, absorption, digestion. So the breakdown of food absolutely is our main focus, but equally as important is the absorption of nutrients. So we're going to look at both mechanical breakdown of food, we're going to look at chemical breakdown of food as we study this system, and then we are going to look at the absorption of nutrients, how it happens, where it happens, and things like that. Now, when we look at the entirety of the digestive system, we're looking at two separate components. We're looking at something called the GI tract or the alimentary canal, and that is from mouth to anus. And then we're going to look at things called accessory organs. These would be like our teeth, the pancreas, the liver and gallbladder, the things that are kind of stuck to that canal, that GI tract. So breakdown of food, absorption of nutrients, and then it can be either the alimentary canal and or the accessory organ. So we're going to jump into the alimentary canal itself, and you have this picture in your notes. It is not as labeled. Lots of labels we're not going to look into right now, but you can label what you see in those blanks in your notes. But let's talk first, before we do that, about the different characteristics, the different layers of this GI tract, this canal that we're looking at. And so we're going to start with the innermost layer, and that is the mucosa layer. The mucosa layer. So this is an epithelium. It is going to have absorption taking place in some areas, depending. Now, when we look at these, we are looking at them in a general sense. And then in a little bit, when we talk about absorption and we talk about digestion, we'll look at exactly where we find them and what we're looking at in a more specific organ sense. So the mucosa is that innermost layer. Then we're going to come to the submucosa. And that is going to be where you're going to find blood vessels and nerves and different glands. Definitely an important part of this. You're also looking at both connective and epithelial tissue. Then moving outwards, you're going to come to our muscular layer. muscularis, and you're going to have circular muscles and longitudinal, and that's going to give us some movement. In a little bit, we're going to talk about some of the ways that we move things through the GI tract. We're going to talk about peristalsis, and we're going to talk about segmentation. And so that can't happen without the muscles. And so that muscularis layer, very important. And then we come to the serosa layer, and we'll talk more specifically about that layer as well, because we're going to talk about it in terms of where it's located in the body. So make sure you have just the blanks filled in, of course, and then we're again going to get into a little bit more specifics when we get into some of the organs and some of their details. Now, one of the layers that we're going to talk about is in the small intestine. And so attached to or part of the mucosa layer is something called villi. And specifically in the small intestine, it's going to increase surface area. Now, you know that I like to stop and talk about things when not only when the system is going correctly, but we do talk about those things when the system is damaged or something is going wrong. And the example here is actually celiac disease. Now, some of you may have heard about it. Some of you may have experienced not necessarily the disease itself, but some of the side effects that are similar. For example, gluten. Gluten in your diet can actually trigger immune cells to attack the villi. And notice in the celiac disease how the villi have atrophied. They've actually gotten smaller. A lot of times we use atrophy, we hear that in muscles. We talked about that in the muscular system way back in chapter 6. But when we're talking about it with anything, we can use that as a general term of it's getting smaller. And obviously, if the purpose of the villi is to increase surface area, then when those atrophy and get smaller, then there's not that effect. There's not the bigger, better surface area for those nutrients. So celiac disease does damage those. And so our body, somebody that has this or has gluten intolerance, can have trouble absorbing nutrients necessary for health and growth. And so they're going to definitely want to look into, maybe it is just as simple as forgetting about gluten and going gluten-free, or maybe it is some medical intervention. So I told you we were going to talk about how is our food moved around? How are those muscles? How do they come into play? One of those is called peristalsis. Now notice the animation, but also the picture, the still picture, and it is showing how it's pushing food down. So notice the direction of the food, and then notice how there's a contraction. Now remember, this is a tube, so picture it all the way around, not just cut in half. And notice when this contracts, it pushes food down. And then the next section contracts and it pushes food down. And this is happening especially in the esophagus. So peristalsis is a really interesting way that food does move down. I often think about this as like a constriction kind of thing. So I picture from my biology classes a snake, but like a snake that they swallow their food whole, and then the body of the snake and the muscle of the snake contract in such a way that it pushes that food down. So if you ever watched a nature documentary, you may be familiar with what I'm talking about. All right, let's get started. Start at the top. We're going to start with the mouth, the anatomy of the mouth. This is the first place of digestion. Now, there's a couple of things we'll talk about with this. First of all, chewing and mixing with saliva is the start of digestion. So chewing the food is what we call mechanical digestion. It's breaking it down mechanically with tools. And the tools would be the teeth. It mixes with the saliva. And when it does that, there are enzymes. There's an amylase that actually starts the digestion of the carbohydrates. Then you'll notice you have the tongue, and then also the palate. Now, we talked about the palate earlier when we were talking about the respiratory system. So this does form the roof of the oral cavity or the floor of the nasal cavity. And then the very last part of the mouth would be the uvula, which is in the back of the mouth.